All right.
Okay, now we get the.
Other business?
Yes, so getting to that.
What's that thing?
That's
What's that thing? I didn't get the business.
Okay, so the landscape plan for 13 Pigeon Hill. The plants were the trees that were required between 13 Pigeon and the abutter were planted according to the approved plan.
They're not too for.
However, the issue, and let me get to that photo so I can show you. The issue is that the property owner next door does not feel that the plants were at all what the board typically would do for site plan.
Well, you were going to go out and
Yeah.
take a look.
So what happened was, so this is from her property, and they planted. This is panorama, so it's all scrunched together. These are 14-foot trees here. We required 7 to 8, 16s rather. Here they increased them to 14. Here over here are the smaller ones that are 6 to 8. One of them needs to be replaced because it was definitely like under was just at 6 and then had a dead like leader, and so that basically is just going to become a shrub. But Kim and I went out, and these two here, they're going to be bringing up to the 14 foot high. But then the developer wants to basically just keep the other 3. The property owner, whose property this is looking across, basically came in
the very close house, the
Yes.
sister house.
Yeah, came in complaining to me about how this just is not adequate. This is not what the planning board does. And I said, best thing is put it in writing, and I'll review it with the board. And board members can go out, drive by, and can evaluate whether or not this is sort of the standard that as a planning board we strive for. My thought is that there needs to be probably additional plantings that are planted in between, because just increasing certain heights is not going to cut it. Because
Can we do that legally? I mean, we've already voted on our conditions.
I know I view it as sort of just working with the property owner. And he willingly replaced 2 of the trees to bring them up to 14 feet. He said, I want to do work again. So, I can't just say no.
Because I recall the problem with this wasn't there a driveway going in, and that there's just not a lot of space to do anything beyond the soldier line of trees.
So that house meets setback, but hers is 10 feet away from the property line. That's the issue, is that
Right, her house is not in the setback.
they basically had about 15 feet that they planted these trees, and they're staggered. But that because the existing house next door was 10 feet away from the property line, I mean, there's nothing you can
I'm
really.
sure this was Kim's consideration, that you could plant 14-foot trees right next to each other as a solid screen, but then
5 years from now,
they're going
half
to
of
crowd
them
each
go.
other out.
Yeah. And they'll look crappy.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's where switching out so that as you continue down, they reduce down to, or the reduced trees get increased for the next 2. She thought that was, of course, more positive than keeping those trees. One has to be replaced anyways, which they have other things that's going to be going in down around the corner. So for some of them, it's just really taking these
are
out,
also
putting
going to grow a lot more.
right. So
They're going to spread more. That's the
yeah,
thing.
they absolutely will. They absolutely will, and that's this is.
She just wants instant gratification.
Yes.
Well, on the other hand,
But she'll
sometimes
pay
you
for it
can-
in the end because these things are all gonna choke each other off.
Well, she
You'd have to
could
add
plant-
more
She
and
could plant some
stagger
trees
them.
on her side.
But,
She doesn't have any room.
there's no room. That's, I think that was the point that's.
There's no
But
Susan
room.
made.
I understand what she's talking about.
What
And
about
maybe you
her wall?
can't do a whole blocking wall,
You
but
can't.
maybe we
Can't
could
do
stick in things like tall miscanthus grasses. There were some grasses out there that so they get crowded out. Big deal. They're cheap to begin with, but they will provide some sort of a blocking. I mean, there are
There's
some
nothing to
things,
do with that.
just right. But if it's in summertime, it's probably when she's out here the most. And it,
So could you-
and it's like a sort of herbaceous solution as opposed to just trying to ram in some more trees, and it's
Yeah.
not expensive.
But they're putting in more shrubs now anyway, right?
Yes.
That they haven't planted yet.
These next two, they're increasing to the same height, so they'll be the same heights, which those are 14.
But nothing-
But I
Doesn't
mean,
matter.
aren't you,
This-
didn't you say there was going to be other stuff here?
No, that was the only thought that we could sort of think of was on sort of peppering things in the gaps, because these are offset so that as they grow they will merge rather than because originally they proposed a line of arborvitae.
Yeah. I don't
which
think that
then
we
was
can
not.
say right now that we're going to make it so she can't see some part of that house, but we could make it so it could, with herbaceous, inexpensive solutions, putting things that, if they get crowded out, that's fine. They're crowded out in a few years, but it would at least not be a straight shot, right straight through. It's a little bit of a block. Maybe she'll have to, live with something up here. I'll have to talk to Kim about it.
Yeah. So.
And this wouldn't cost the builder $1 zillion.
Yeah, so she, of course, wanted to express her displeasure, and I wanted to let the board know and just find out, is this something that the board wants to meet with the property owner? Is it something, have Kim and I get back in touch with Jeffrey Bump and say, what other more imaginative ways can we look at sort of mitigating a situation with the abutter as opposed to just.
Well, at this stage, though, it's what the developer does is basically voluntary,
Yeah.
Right.
and that should be made really clear that
Yeah.
he's performed according to the rules
Yeah.
and the regulations. Maybe he'll be willing to do some more, and maybe he wouldn't be, but communicating to. I mean, she's got a gripe, and it's legitimate. But it needs to be some negotiation, some working together, and some understanding that yes, you can see more now. Next year you'll see less. The year after a little less.
I don't think she's going to listen to those kinds of arguments.
Well,
but David, we could meet Kim out there, and we could talk about, as Sue was saying, talk about these gaps here. Some ways that we might, creative ways that we might plug the holes.
Yeah. Just until the trees grow.
But also, if it's voluntary, can't he volunteer to plant something on her property?
That's
The
that's
issue
already
the issue
room.
is that
Between
there's
them.
really
Isn't
hardly
that where
any
the
room.
room is? I thought there
No.
was more room on her property.
No, she's 10 feet away from the
But
property
I
line.
see a lot of room right there. So
Well, that's again, it's stretched out because I did a panorama, and the property line is like coming right by this tree.
We have to go out there.
Yeah, we have to.
The
It looks
property
like
line
it's
is
a-
this state.
Yeah.
So this
between here.
It looks like
between-
there's a
like
million
this
miles.
tree.
No, see here's the bump out of the house. I'm in her backyard, so I'm actually behind the face of that side of the house. So this is,
Right, but there's still.
the picture's
It
stretched.
looks like
so
there's a
it's
ton of
rubber
room
sheet.
that I
But-
suspect isn't really there.
Exactly,
I think
it's just how I
a
took
wide
that.
angle lens, so it stretches everything out.
yeah,
That's what I suspect it is.
yeah.
But if we go out there and take a look, maybe there is room, to put a couple more of these or something else, the grass or something that would, because it's just a couple of places where you
Yeah.
got to take the curse
Right.
off.
And I was like, he had all those pine seedlings that were like this high. I mean, can you take a couple of? I mean,
They
Just trying
transplant
to-
great if you do them in October, November. But I
So-
think she kind of
Don't
would
you
like
have to-
something right away.
Don't you have to determine just exactly how much in compliance with the order the person who's supposed to plant was, more or less what David said. Because it's very nice to show sympathy, but as was my experience, you come in, you make the best case you can to get as much protection as you can, and after you've made the best case you can, the planning board makes the order, and that's it. And either if they don't comply, then okay, you pound them. And if they do comply, then you just say,
It
this
becomes
is,
a
you
voluntary
know, right, and then it's
negotiation.
just PR for the planning board, which I'm perfectly in sympathy with, but then you make nice words, but you don't have to promise anything.
The owner
after.
could agree to put a couple of
Oh,
more.
no, you don't have to tell me, I'm just saying that I don't want you guys to
We don't think we have a,
feel.
We don't
We
have
can't
to-
order him to do
yeah,
it.
We can't say you gotta do this, because.
We can't.
Oh,
This is
right.
in compliance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's in compliance.
but
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with going,
Oh.
and talking to the neighbor and.
said, right, he would like to build again in town, without, getting a bad rep.
And we do believe that this will be adequate, but it will take some time for it.
I guess I would worry a little bit about going beyond what the order was, because I think that everybody, the planning board is so open and willing to listen to everybody's needs and interests, that if you don't come and make a good case, then you're lost, bad. And if you do, then once the order is made, it's made. If they don't comply, then okay, but just kind of,
It's about what people picture.
no, I understand,
Okay,
but.
she pictured solid green. And our landscape consultant is saying you can do solid green, but then it doesn't,
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
gonna
this is all very
die.
familiar to me, right? This is
So-
all,
But you don't get solid green from day one.
That's
No.
right, but she pictured solid green, so we're just trying to
you know,
work with the two of
I
them.
understand, I had us follow the same thing. And it wasn't even as well justified, because the argument that it was, this is only what the planning board ever historically demanded isn't correct. There's find zillions of examples of denser protection. I just don't want you guys to be out on a limb and,
Oh, it's
trying to
too-
do
We're all over
something
that.
Too late for that.
Constantly.
What else do we have to go over to?
David would
That's-
say that train
that's
left
it.
the station one.
The only, I received 2 applications for July 2nd, a gun range,
Great.
It's a new one.
Sibley Road. Town meeting, someone actually mentioned about this.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
It's gonna be an interior gun range.
Yes,
Is that the
inside.
place near the gas station?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Under 128?
Yeah.
It's a Wild West show down there anyway, so.
Exactly.
And then, you just need people with loaded guns going in and out of there.
Okay,
That's
yes.
the final touch.
And then
Easy off the highway too.
accessory garage for 67 Bay State that they submitted today. Also have a revision to a landscape plan for, and I was thinking that, Alan, Sue, because you may have recalled when this one first came in, 33 skating pond.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff that's dying. Steve Lyons wants to redo the landscape entrance, and so I want to have that on in a second as well. And basically, it's just a drive-by sidewalk with the 2 I mean, everyone's welcome, but there was some conditions that were in place that at least historically seem to be more tied to the previous decision. So that's realistically, I was expecting a lot more of a flurry at the end, and it's sort of,
Don't say it.
well, no, today was the deadline. So everyone else is sort of taking their time and knowing that they're going to be submitting in another month or a month and a half for the fall.
All right, then my question is, do we need to assign tree covers?
There's only
Why don't we
Very
just
few of them.
go
I'm gonna go
drive-
with them all.
yeah, there are only 6 left,
Okay.
so we can drive around and take a look.
Yeah.
So we move to close the.
I'm not coming. I like it here.
So
I'm
moved.
staying.
Second.
All in favor?
Darn.
Aye.